Hello, I'm Ashley Thomas and welcome to my channel, and here is my review of It Chapter 2. Directed by Andy Muschietti. He also directed the first chapter, the first movie, and I felt like he did a very good job with that movie. I have got a review up for that as well if you want to check that out. And obviously based from the novel of the same name by Stephen King, a book that I've never read. I plan on reading. So I can't really compare this adaptation to the novel. And so yeah, when it comes to the story and how the story is presented and told, I can't really draw any comparisons between the live adaptation of the novel and the novel itself. So It Chapter 2 starts off with what was for me the most disturbing part of the movie. The first scene, the opening scene in this movie, was the most disturbing part of the entire movie, and it's the homophobic attack. You know, it's really hard to watch, and it felt very, very real. The way in which it was shot, how the camera focused on the attack, and you know, and it also because it mirrors the evil that still exists in the world today. And I felt that, you know, by showing this, by having this in the movie, it felt very relevant because of the current times that we are living in. So I felt like this scene worked to an extent because it was needed. Pennywise the clown feeds off hatred, fear and ignorance. So for me, this was a disturbing and hard scene to watch, but one that the movie needed within it. Though there is a part of me that felt like they lingered on the violence just a little too long. And so I ended up questioning, did we really need to see so much of the punches, so much of the kicks, so much of the attack? Because, you know, there was a part of me thinking that there's a part of me that just felt like I wanted it to stop. But then there was also a part of me that thought, actually, maybe we do need this. Maybe we do need this focus, this particular sort of intense focus on the scene, because it shows the true extent of how evil people can be. So when it comes to this scene, this opening scene, I am a little torn on it. It works, but maybe could have been executed slightly differently. But then by doing it slightly differently, it may have lost the impact that it did have. And I really felt like, you know, like I said, I was torn. And I felt like it needed to be that extreme and that disturbing to really sort of get across how evil, you know, how evil people can really be and what sort of form evil can exist in and all of that. So to really get that across, at the same time, you know, being a homosexual man, I just found it incredibly hard to watch. So it worked. But at the same time, it sort of I ended up questioning, did they really need such a large, intense, you know, sort of in focus on this attack? Because it was a brutal scene. But yeah, the cast are all great. The casting within this movie was spot on, like in the previous movie. You got some great chemistry. Bill Hader being one of the standouts for me. The other is Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the clown. He did such a fantastic job in portraying this character, like in the first movie. You know, he was so creepy and intense. I love the little nuances that he gave the clown. You know, the little things he would do with his expressions and his movements just helped really put you on edge. His performance really helped intensify the horror and tension. And going back to Bill Hader, you know, his performance just felt very real. Like, you could feel, you know, the emotional pain that the character was going through. He did a really good job in reflecting that and what this character was going through and what he was feeling. Just felt very real. And the same with the rest of the cast, really. Everyone else gives a really good performance within this movie. But for me, the standouts were Bill Hader and Bill Skarsgård. And then going back to Pennywise, there were two scenes within this movie that stood out to me, which involved Pennywise the clown. One of those scenes is when a girl sort of just wanders under the seats at a baseball game. You know, I thought it was an incredibly well shot and well performed scene. Just it was very creepy and gave me goosebumps, and that was as a result of the way the scene played out, and the performance by Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise was just, like I said, incredible. And then you've got the other scene which is in the trailer, the sort of House of Mirrors with McAvoy. Again, McAvoy gives a really good, solid a very real performance as well. McAvoy is also really good in this film. You know, the scene with the House of Mirrors I really liked. It was really intense, and there's this one moment in it towards the climax of that scene where you've got the kid. It's in the trailers. The trailers show too much as far as I'm concerned, but you've got the kid sort of trapped, and then you've got McAvoy's character on one side and Pennywise's character on the other side, and Pennywise is trying to get to the kid. And the climax of that scene, the way it was done, it was so intense, and it's also helped by, there was a lot of practical effects used within this movie, but they did have CGI effects as well, and I felt like that's where, sort of, for me, the aura would sort of diminish, was the CGI effects. I wasn't a big fan of how they implemented the CGI within this movie. But yeah, overall, I thought it was just a very impactful scene that was creepy, gave me goosebumps. So It Chapter 2 does have its creepy and intense moments scattered throughout, but overall, I didn't find it that scary. I wanted it to be just a little, I wanted this movie to scare me more, and I just felt like the CGI for me within this movie and how it was utilized sort of would help diminish the horror a little bit. I'll give you an example actually, and don't worry, no spoilers, because this moment is actually within the trailer, and I think it was the first trailer actually, and it's that scene with Jessica Chastain. Again, brilliant performance from Jessica. And it's a brilliant moment. It's a very, it's very intense. It puts you on the edge of your seat because you know something is not quite right and something is going to happen. And you see it, like I said, you see it in the trailer, and the moment you hear those footsteps, it proper creeped me out, purely because of how it built up. The performances and just how that scene played out, and then you hear those footsteps, and it sort of focuses on those footsteps for a few seconds, and it did. It gave me goosebumps. It was creepy until you get the reveal. And there's a reveal because, like I said, it's in the trailers. And for me, the horror sort of vanished because the CGI used within that reveal just didn't work. It just sort of really didn't match the tone of the moment, if you get what I'm saying. Now, maybe this is just me, and it could very well be, but if it's not, or if it is, let me know below in the comments. Like, don't get me wrong, I liked how the scene played out, but it just took one element of that scene for me to throw me out. I liked the design. I liked the design aspect of this entity, if you want to call it that. But the way that it was actually brought to life on the screen just threw me out a little bit. But it also made me think. It made me realize, going back to that moment where you just hear the footsteps going boom, 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 boom across, and it just the sound design and just how it sort of played out, it really was creepy, and I really liked it. And it made me realize you don't really need to see a lot of anything for the movie to have any sort of impact when it comes to scares, and the horror. The more you don't see, the better when it comes to horror. And just sort of that scene was working so well up until that point, until that reveal, I felt. And even with that sound of the footsteps was just perfect. So maybe if they didn't quite focus on this entity as much, yeah, you've seen it, but used more practical effects, I felt like it would have had more, it would have had a, much stronger impact. The other element that didn't quite work for me was humor within this movie. The humor just did not quite work for me. When it comes to humor in horrors, for me, I feel like it should be used more to relieve tension after a certain horrific moment, and needs to align with the tone of the overall movie. For me, I felt like they didn't achieve this within It Chapter 2. It just felt, the humour within this movie felt a little misplaced. It was often used before a build-up to a moment, and for me that just doesn't work. I did get a few laughs from this movie when it comes to the humour, but overall for me it just felt a little misplaced at times, and like going back to the CGI, maybe sort of diminish the impact of the scares and the horror. And the atmosphere, even. The atmosphere that, that they were attempting to create. The structure of the story, I think, was my biggest problem with this movie, and its messages and themes. I felt like these just got lost throughout its almost 3-hour runtime. You would think that in 3 hours you would have enough chance to get, your message across, but due to the structure of the narrative within this movie and how the story played out, it was a little choppy, and sometimes it would just throw me out a little. Maybe it's due to there being an hour cut out of this film, because apparently this was 4 hours long, and I felt like, I think this movie at least felt like it needed that extra hour, I felt. And then I felt like the narrative may have run just a little bit smoother. You know, it's not a massive issue for me, and it just about sort of just strings together, but overall could have been a little smoother. And I just felt like the themes and the messages that this story was exploring and was trying, you know, the messages that it was trying to say just got lost as a result, and would have been more emotional. It would have had a much more emotional impact, especially towards the end, during the third act. It sort of just lost that impact. It lost the emotional clout that I felt like that they were aiming for as a result of this sort of meandering, choppy structure when it comes to the narrative. So when it comes to the third act, I actually quite enjoyed the third act. I enjoyed this movie overall, don't get me wrong. It sounds like there's a lot of negatives, but overall I really enjoyed this movie. But when it comes to the third act, I felt like we started to enter a different genre, and that was fantasy. For me, we did lose the horror more towards its third act and into the climax. And with that, we ended up losing the sort of the closeness and intimacy of the story going on between the main cast. You know, it sort of loses its focus on the human element of the struggle that they are going through, and it became a little too fantastical. But still enjoyed it, and I was still immersed. Overall, I actually really enjoyed this movie, and I know it's, you know, I enjoyed this experience. I know it sounds like a lot of negatives, but overall the movie for me was an enjoyable one, with themes and messages that I could see and appreciated, even though I felt like they got lost. It had its creepy moments which gave me goosebumps. The horror didn't always work. You got great chemistry and performances from the cast, with an ending that was satisfying but maybe lost some of the emotional weight and impact that it was really aiming for, that I think Andy Muschietti was aiming for. And you could feel the love for the material. You know, I felt like there was a lot of love in this movie. You know, like I said, I can't compare it to the novel, but when it comes to how this movie was made, like the first chapter, you could feel that love for the source material. And so, yeah, as a result, you know, with all its negatives, I actually overall enjoyed the experience, and I liked what they were aiming for. And yeah, overall it was entertaining, and I was immersed. And like I've said before, that's exactly what a film should do, and that is for 2 hours, or in this case 3 hours, forget about reality and you're immersed into this world, and they achieved that. And so as a result, I will be giving it Chapter 2 a 7 out of 10. It almost got a 6.5 out of 10 from me, but do you know what? I enjoyed it so much, and like I said, I could really appreciate what they were going for and how the film was brought together and what they were aiming for, that I just felt like, no, I'm going to give this film, for me, is a solid 7 out of 10. And so yeah, they are my thoughts and opinions of it. Chapter 2, what did you guys think? Please let me know below, and let's get a discussion going maybe. So yeah, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to see future reviews from me, from some just random Welsh guy who just loves to talk about film and TV and everything geeky, then why not hit subscribe, and I'll be seeing you soon.